your local Oldsmobile dealer, the dealer who brings you famous rocket-fueled Oldsmobiles, presents an up-to-the-minute account of today's headline news reported to you by television's foremost news commentator, Douglas Edwards.
And very good evening, everybody. Coast to coast, Douglas Edwards reporting. Today, the Soviets plan to launch a dog into space. Laika, the canine cosmonaut, will be the first living animal shot into orbit. The stray selected for scrappiness will be sent to space in Sputnik 2. Coincidentally, last night, residents of the small Texas town Loveland reported several sky sightings. Some suspect saucers. Office A.J. Fowler, a patrolman who responded to most of last night's calls, shares his account.
Greetings. I'm A.J. Fowler, the officer who was on patrol the evening of those UFO sightings. I was sitting in the call room, mind my own business, just another typical night. It's actually the same place I am right now. I was right in this very same seat. And like I said, sometimes it's a dull line of work being on call duty, because on call duty not really too much happens in Loveland, Texas. We ain't like those big cities, San Antonio, Austin. In Loveland, we get calls about tornadoes every now and then, or about missing persons, but never so much thing as aliens. Well, let me tell you, right along that night I was here, as I said, and got a call. It was about 11 o'clock. I think I remember it was around 11, from Pedro Saucedo. Pedro Saucedo was his name. I remember he was the first of many. And he called, and I picked up, just like this thing here. We have state-of-the-art technology, the PACT bell they call it. I picked up, and Pedro was saying he'd seen something funny. He was saying his car lights were going weird, his engine was stopping, and I didn't quite believe him at first. I thought maybe he had too much to drink, just the time of night, that's in Loveland, people do that. So that's what I was thinking. I didn't really think much of it. I hung up the dispatch and went back to my crossword puzzle I had been working on. Crossword puzzles were one of my favorite ways to pass the time. Anyway, after that call from Pedro, nothing much happened. I didn't think much of it. Noted it down in the duty log. And then about an hour later, seemed there was another call from a Mr. W. That's all he called and said his name was, Mr. W. And a similar thing had happened to him, except he was 4 miles east of Loveland when he called. So I got to scratching my head and thinking, 2 people at the same call, different times, different things, really. I mean, it was similar, boasting about seeing this big alien ship. He says about 200 feet. That's longer than old Jimmy used to run when we were playing football. He couldn't get much past 200 feet before he'd been tired. That's a long distance. So, I noted that one down. Things were starting to pick up. And a lot of my calls were the same. I'd pick up and say, "This is Officer Fowler talking here." They'd go ahead. They'd tell me what was happening. They'd complain, or they'd say something freaky was happening. And I'd tell them, stay calm, it's probably just a meteorite or something like that, something flashing. Maybe they're seeing things, just try to keep them real quiet. But they were a bit too excited, I think. Anyways, so that's my report. I don't know if that'll help you in your research, reporter, but there it is.
Next, we'll check in with a witness who explains her experiences with the flying saucers last night.
At about midnight at the end of November the 2nd and the beginning of November the 3rd, my boyfriend and I experienced something from beyond the world. My boyfriend is a student at Texas Tech and he was visiting for the night, so we went for a drive. We were about 9 miles east from Levelland when the car started to sputter out and the motor was running like we were out of gas, but we had just filled up less than an hour ago. We soon rolled to a stop, the headlights dimmed, and eventually the car just shut down. My boyfriend got out of the car to check under the hood, but there didn't seem to be any problem. That is, until we saw the thing that people claim to be an unidentified object. It was oval-shaped, flat on the bottom, and was glowing with a bluish-green light. It was just sitting on the road ahead of us. We sat there and just stared at it for what seemed like forever. We kept trying to get this car started, but it wouldn't start. We noticed that it was probably about 125 feet long and made of something that looked like aluminum. Eventually, it rose straight up and just seemed to vanish instantly. As soon as it was gone, the car started again and we were off. We soon found out at least 14 other people saw similar things and reported it to the police just like we had. But now the government is trying to tell us that it was all the U.S.S.R. Well, I know the U.S.S.R. is getting a little too cozy with the idea of space travel, but there's no way that thing was of this Earth. I don't understand why this keeps happening with multiple witnesses reporting it each time, and the government keeps blaming the U.S.S.R.
Next, we will check in with James Lee, ufologist, investigating the incident.
Good evening, fellow Earthlings. James Lee, ufologist from the ancient and mystic order Rosicrucis, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, and the Interplanetary Space Patrol. You too could join and be a member and have your own badge. We are sending signal out tonight to over 40 cities across the Southwest, and I'm here to tell you folks that this is for real. Do not believe what the government is telling you, for I was there in my modified space wagon interviewing witnesses. I tell you, friends, they are coming. UFOs visit us all the time. My instruments detect tractor beams from these large UFOs that are coming from Venus and Mars, and these little ones are remotely operated. They've learned English, I tell you. They know what we do. They are spying on us all the time. We have recorded tapes of them. Something big is going to happen this month. Something, I tell you, is about to happen. And when it does, be prepared.
Welcome to NASA. Competition with the U.S.S.R. really began with the bombing of Japan at the end of World War II. Not only did we kick off the fight for the most atomic weapons, we also then spilled into space, competing with the U.S.S.R. for the bragging rights of landing on the moon, orbiting the sun, just discovering what else could be out there. Is there other life? Let's look at the timeline. Things really begin to heat up in the late 50s when the USSR launches Luna 1 into space and Sputnik 1 and 2. While they focused on putting household pets into orbit, we focused on satellite gains. And so you have the first weather satellite that's launched by the US in 1958, And you also have the Christmas, Merry Christmas message that is broadcast from orbit with President Eisenhower wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. In '62, President Kennedy makes it a mission for the United States and NASA to achieve a moon landing by the end of the decade. Something that we were successful in doing. In December of 1968, you have the orbiting of the moon and the first photos broadcast of what the Earth looks like. So in 2020, we are now shifting gears. The only way to get to the International Space Station today is either to take the Soyuz shuttle, or you have the new commercial venture of SpaceX. The goal of NASA in the next few years is to put an all-female crew on the moon. Early in the spring of 2020, we had the first all-female spacewalk that occurred at the International Space Station. And we're starting to look at broadening the scope of what we can do in space, utilizing not just the resources of NASA, but also the resources of commercial ventures like SpaceX and Elon Musk.